Uh-oh. Who broke the rules? Day 20 of Karen Read's trial wrapped up on Wednesday, and it's also wrapped up week 5. Yes, there will be no more court this week. Hi, my name is Sydney Rushing. I'm a criminal defense attorney in the state of Michigan. Now let's talk about it. Court started off with a major delay in testimony. First, there was a sidebar, and then she pulled in the jurors. And she said, look, I have to talk to each of you individually, one-on-one with the attorneys, and this could take some time. But this is what I have to do. An issue has been made present, and we're going to do this first. No cameras, nobody could be in the courtroom at this time. And, everyone's like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Told them not to speculate about what she was going to talk to them about and to talk about anything other than this case. Of course, you already know that this is going to take a while, and she let them know that as well. The result of the issue was a change in seating for the jurors, but all jurors remained. Now, my opinion is what happened based on what Canoni told them about talking about this to other people, which includes each other, is a juror must have made some kind of comment about the case to somebody. And so by calling each of them in individually and asking them probably who said what and what have you, it didn't single anybody out. So they're all still there, but that's what my thought is and what happened just based on how Judge Canoni said it. That's the context I got. And then instead of continuing with witness number 36, Miss Hanley, we jumped ahead to witness number 37, which was Dr. Wolf, who's a neurosurgeon. Brennan did the direct, and obviously we got a ton of background information. We found out he had surgery the day before. He had surgery on Thursday. He's got surgery on Friday. He said that this is less than 1% of his income by doing this because he doesn't usually testify in trials. And about after 20 minutes of accolades, we finally got to it. He reviewed the chief medical examiner report. He reviewed photos from the autopsy and the forensic pathologies report. It showed a photo of the laceration on the back of John's head, and they discussed it. He described it as an 1.5-inch laceration with bridging contusions and abrasions and said that this is a blunt trauma injury. They went into a lot of detail about what skull fractures are, how they look, and how they, happen, things like that. Got a major anatomy lesson and how the brain works, how it looks, how everything works together, where it sits, all the layers, all of that, and how it reacts like falling backwards. He believes that John falling backwards and hitting his head on the ground was what caused the injury, total point blank. A sidebar was called when Brennan was asking him whether sharp objects could have caused this injury. He made it very clear that somebody could suffer this type of injury by simply falling backwards. He said that John did not have a depressed skull fracture, so this wouldn't be consistent with getting hit with a baseball bat or something like that. He said that the force that John would have had to hit his head would have been a high rate of speed. He said that John probably quickly got to a state where he lost all functional activity and kind of couldn't do anything, but this injury also wouldn't cause him instant death or even death in 15 minutes. The way that this injury looked to him and, basically all the medical terms he said and stuff, he also said that this is what could cause the raccoon eyes. On cross-examination, he came directly out when Alessi asked him, and he said, I am not a forensics pathologist. I'm a neurosurgeon. He was asked if raccoon eyes would cause someone to have the laceration on their eyelid, and he said no. He said that he was aware of the laceration. He said that it is possible that the laceration came from a force from the front and that couldn't happen from John falling backwards. That is totally an unrelated injury. There was no redirect or recross, and I don't think his testimony really helped or hurt either side. And at the end of the day, he's dealing with living brains, not ones that are, being autopsied and things like that. So I think we really do have to wait for the medical examiner that, the defense is bringing in, I guess, to hear their side, because they're the ones who deal with this type of matter where, it's post-mortem and all of that. It is different. Then we had witness number 36, Christina Hanley, back on the stand. Lally showed a picture of item 3-2 along with item 712, and she showed that they are a physical match. Remember, item 3-2 is the broken glass. Lots of questions and photos about how these pieces of glass fit together to basically recreate the cup. Item 3-3 was the 5 pieces of glass that were removed from Karen's bumper. Obviously, photos of the pieces were shown. Now, 2 of the 5 pieces were tested, and they were not a physical match to the cup, but they did have the same properties. Then they moved on to item 3-1, which was the taillight and other pieces of plastic. She said the pieces of the plastic that she received that came off of John's clothing did have the same characteristics as the taillight, but she couldn't say that they were from the taillight. She could only say that they could have been from the taillight, but they could have also been from another object that's, pretty much the same. And directly after she said, essentially, that these could be a taillight thing, Judge Canoni asked if this was a good time to take a break. Lally said, look, I think I've only got about 3 more minutes of questions, and Judge Canoni called a sidebar and said, I'll only be 2 minutes. Now make that make sense, because there are people here who say she favors the prosecution, and I just don't think that that's a good look, that you're now trying to take a break after this witness has said, essentially that these could be a match to the taillight, right? That's kind of messed up because then they did in fact go to lunch. And that just gets to sit in their brain, and that's the last thing they've heard before, they take this long break. So it just sits there and just keeps meddling, right? Anyways, they have lunch. After lunch, we got another visual aid of the testing that she did with the infrared light, and she showed the spectrum and how these pieces have the same characteristics. And again, she confirmed that these could be from the taillight, but also they could be from something else that has the similar, properties and characteristics and things like that. Any other piece of plastic that looks just like that or, is made up like that. Jackson came out and did the cross, and the very first thing he had her do was confirm that the pieces of taillight could have been from the taillight, but they could have been from any other origin, and she agreed. And it was a common origin at that. She was asked if the taillight had any glass components, and she said she doesn't recall, but she didn't note it either. She was asked if she saw any blood, human tissue, DNA, anything like that on these pieces of plastic, and she said that that's not her expertise, but she would have noted if she saw something like that, and she didn't. And she confirmed that if she would have seen something like that, she would have noted it. They started discussing the glass evidence, and then once there was a sidebar called. And for whatever reason, Judge Cannoni apologized to the jury for it, and it's like, look, they're there either way, they gotta do what they gotta do. Jackson had her confirm who submitted these specific pieces of glass in each of these items. One was Buchanan and one was Proctor. And then there was another sidebar over a photo or visual aid that Jackson was trying to use, and was ironically used in the first trial, which showed how and which pieces were matches and not matches and who submitted what. Then before Jackson was able to introduce this photo, which showed, directly, made it very clear about the matches, non-matching, and everything all on one page, there was another sidebar because, of course, Brennan does not want this coming in. But anyways, it ends up coming in, and it's a very nice visual aid for the jury. It was nicely laid out, the pieces in, it was all columnized and everything like that. And he showed that nothing on the bumper, no glass on the bumper, matched a cup. And the 6 to 9 pieces of one of the items did match the cup, but those pieces were found at 34 Fairview. However, piece E of the glass that didn't match anything from Karen Read's bumper did match the same exact glass that Trooper Proctor submitted, which didn't match to anything. It was found at the scene at 34 Fairview, but it did not match anything. But that one piece did. And then Lally came up and did redirect. He asked questions about the visual aid that had just been up, and then started asking a lot of questions about if she know who, got what from where. There was lots of objections. Cannoni sustained those objections, and then we had a sidebar. And Lally had her point out that nothing on the visual aid talked about the taillight pieces or how the other small taillight pieces, matched the big taillight piece. On a very short recross, Jackson had her confirm that none of the glass on the bumper matched to anything except the one piece matching to Proctor's piece that didn't match to anything either, but was at the scene. See, court is done for the day. Cannoni sends everyone home and says we're ahead of schedule, so we're not going to have court on Thursday or Friday or Monday because it's the holiday. So trial will resume on Tuesday with day 21 in the beginning of week 6. That is it for your day 20 recap. Thank you for being here. Thanks for following along. And here's my question of the day. What do you think happened with the jury this morning and caused all this big ruckus and everybody having to be talked to one-on-one? Do you think I'm right in my analysis? Let me know in the comments.